You think your enemies are the problem. You think you keep losing because someone out there is smarter, faster, more connected, more ruthless. But here is the truth: you have been running from your entire life. You have been losing every battle before it even starts, and the enemy was inside you the whole time. Nobody had to defeat you. You walked into every room, every conflict, every negotiation, every confrontation already wounded, already reactive, already handing your opponent the weapon they needed to destroy you. And you did it voluntarily. You did it automatically. You did it so many times that it became your default setting, and you started calling it personality. You started calling it just who you are. It is not who you are. It is who you became when you stopped paying attention to the war happening inside your own skull. The most dangerous opponent you will ever face is not the person across the table. It is the version of you that reacts before thinking, that flinches before choosing, that sabotages before understanding. Master that opponent, and every external enemy becomes manageable terrain. Refuse to master that opponent, and it does not matter how clever your strategy is, because the man executing it is already compromised. Machiavelli understood this 500 years ago. He wrote about power, about deception, about the ruthless art of reading people and controlling situations. But underneath all of it, underneath every principle of strategy and dominance, was a single foundational assumption. You cannot govern a kingdom when your own house is on fire. You cannot manipulate the emotions of others when your own emotions are manipulating you. You cannot project power when you are bleeding power internally from a dozen wounds you refuse to even look at. The external enemy is real. I am not telling you to ignore the people who want to take from you. I am telling you that every single one of those people is secondary. They are the second front. The first front, the only front that matters until it is secured, is inside your head. And right now, you are losing that front so badly that no amount of external strategy can compensate for it. Here are 7 ways your own mind betrays you before anyone else even gets the chance. 7 internal patterns that are quietly costing you respect, money, relationships, opportunities, and years of your life. 7 doors you keep leaving unlocked, that anyone with half a brain can walk through and take whatever they want from you. By the end of this, you will see every single one of them. And once you see them, you cannot unsee them. That is the price of awareness. You pay it once, and it changes you permanently. Number 1. You turn information into personal attacks. This is the first and most expensive betrayal your mind commits against you. Someone says something, makes a decision, takes an action, and your brain does not process it as data. It processes it as a threat to your identity. Your boss changes the scope of your project. Your partner makes a comment about how you handled something. A friend gives you advice you did not ask for. Your colleague gets the promotion you wanted. In each case, the event itself is neutral. It is information. It is a fact about the world that you now have to deal with. But your mind does not see it that way. Your mind immediately converts it into a verdict on your worth. The project change becomes "they do not trust me." The comment becomes "they think I am incompetent." The advice becomes "they think they are better than me." The promotion becomes "I am not good enough." Do you see what just happened? You took a piece of information that could have been useful, and you turned it into an emotional wound. Now instead of responding strategically, you are reacting defensively. Instead of asking "what does this mean for my next move," you are asking "why is everyone against me?" That question is poison. It does not lead anywhere productive. It leads to resentment, withdrawal, overcompensation, lashing out. All of which are predictable, all of which are exploitable, and all of which make your situation worse. Most people live their entire lives in this mode. Every piece of feedback is an attack. Every setback is a conspiracy. Every difference of opinion is a betrayal. They walk through the world with their identity hanging out, exposed, waiting to be bruised by the next thing that does not perfectly validate them. Strategic people do something different. They separate the information from the emotional charge. They look at what happened, they look at what it means practically, and they leave the question of what it says about their worth out of it entirely. Not because they do not care about their worth, but because they know that question is a trap. It is a trap that leads nowhere useful, and the person who falls into it every time is the easiest person in the world to control. If someone knows that criticizing your work will make you emotional, they own you. If someone knows that questioning your intelligence will make you defensive, they own you. If someone knows that ignoring you will make you desperate for attention, they own you. Every time you convert information into a personal attack, you hand someone a button they can press whenever they want to make you dance. Stop dancing. Start observing. The event is the event. Your worth is not on the table. It was never on the table. You put it there yourself, and you can take it off yourself. Number 2. Anger is a gift you keep giving to your enemies. This one is going to sting, because most people have built their entire identity around the idea that their anger is justified. And maybe it is. Maybe someone genuinely wronged you. Maybe you were treated unfairly, disrespected, lied to, manipulated. The anger makes sense. I am not questioning whether you have a right to feel it. I am telling you what it costs you. Anger is the most exploitable emotion in the human arsenal. It is the one emotion that makes you simultaneously feel powerful and act weak. When you are angry, you feel like you are standing your ground, like you are finally pushing back, like you are refusing to be a victim anymore. But what is actually happening? Your judgment narrows. Your time horizon collapses to the next 30 seconds. You stop thinking about consequences and start thinking about impact. You want them to feel what you feel. You want them to know they cannot do that to you. And in that pursuit of immediate emotional satisfaction, you make decisions that you would never make in a calm state. You send the text. You say the words. You make the threat. You burn the bridge. You escalate the conflict to a level you cannot control. And the person who made you angry? They got exactly what they wanted. If they wanted you emotional, they got it. If they wanted you irrational, they got it. If they wanted you to overplay your hand and expose your position, they got it. You think you are fighting back. You are actually performing on command. The angrier you get, the more predictable you become. And the more predictable you are, the less powerful you are. Machiavelli understood this at a level that most people still cannot grasp. He did not say never feel anger. He said never let anger drive the vehicle. Anger can ride in the car. It cannot touch the steering wheel. The moment it touches the steering wheel, you are no longer driving your own life. Someone else is, and they are driving it toward a cliff. Here is what strategic people do instead. They feel the anger. They acknowledge it. And then they put it in a box and they close the lid, and they make their decision from a place of cold clarity. Not from the heat of the moment, not from the adrenaline spike, not from the righteous fury that feels so good and accomplishes so little. From stillness. From calculation. From the part of the mind that asks not what feels right now, but what works best over the next 6 months. Anger feels like power. Stillness is power. Learn the difference, or keep paying for it with every conflict you enter. Number 3. Your need to be right is costing you the war. This is the betrayal that hurts people the most to hear, because being right is the one thing they can always hold on to, even when they are losing everything else. You would rather be right than be effective. That is not an insult. That is a mechanical observation about how your mind works. When you are in a conflict, your brain does not optimize for the best outcome. It optimizes for the most defensible position. It wants to be able to say, at the end of the day, I was right. I was right and they were wrong. And if I lost, it is only because they were unfair, because the system is rigged, because people are corrupt, because the world does not reward what is good. That story feels better than the alternative, which is I was wrong, or even more painfully, being right was irrelevant. Here is the brutal truth that most people will never accept. Being right and winning are two completely different games. You can be absolutely, undeniably, 100% right and still lose. Still get fired. Still get dumped. Still get outmaneuvered. Still watch someone less moral, less intelligent, less deserving walk away with the prize while you stand there holding your correctness like a trophy nobody asked for. The world does not reward being right. The world rewards being effective. And effectiveness sometimes requires you to abandon the position that is morally correct in favor of the position that is strategically sound. Not always. Not in every situation. But enough times that if you cannot do it, you will spend your life being right and getting nothing for it. Most people cannot make this shift. Their ego is so tightly fused with being right that abandoning a correct position feels like abandoning themselves. It feels like betrayal of their own integrity. So they hold the line. They argue the point. They prove their case. They win the argument. And they lose everything else. Strategic people have learned to separate their ego from being right. They care about outcomes more than vindication. They would rather be effective and misunderstood than be right and defeated. That is not a moral failing. That is the discipline of someone who has decided that winning matters more than the comfort of moral superiority. If you cannot make that decision, your opponents will keep using your righteousness against you. They will let you be right, and they will take everything else. Number 4. You rehearse defeat before it happens. Your mind has a habit that is so subtle, so woven into your daily experience, that you probably do not even recognize it as a pattern. But it is one of the most expensive things you do. You rehearse worst-case scenarios. Not as a strategic exercise, not as contingency planning, but as emotional preparation for pain you have not yet experienced. You walk into a meeting and your mind is already running the version where it goes badly. You approach a conversation and you are already anticipating the rejection. You start a project and you are already visualizing the failure. You lie in bed at night and your mind plays out the conflicts that have not happened yet, the losses that may never come, the humiliations that exist only in your imagination. You think you are preparing yourself. You think you are bracing for impact so it will hurt less when it comes. You are not preparing. You are pre-living the defeat. You are experiencing the pain now, in advance, for free, before anyone has actually done anything to you. And here is the part that should keep you awake tonight. By the time the real situation arrives, you have already been through it emotionally so many times that your body is exhausted, your mind is defeated, and your energy is spent. You walk into the actual moment already drained, already defensive, already expecting the worst. And people can feel it. They can feel the resignation in your posture, the hesitation in your voice, the faint trace of defeat in your eyes before a single word has been spoken. You have telegraphed your loss to everyone in the room without saying anything. Your opponent did not need to do anything. You defeated yourself in the rehearsal and then showed up to the performance already broken. Fear is the only real enemy. Not the external threat, not the actual obstacle, but the fear of it. The fear you nurture by replaying it, by feeding it, by giving it space in your mind to grow. Most obstacles in life are not external. They are internal fears projected outward. You take a fear, you build a scenario around it, you assign it a probability, and then you treat it as if it is already happening. Eliminate the fear, and the obstacle often dissolves on its own. Not because it was not real, but because you stopped pouring your energy into it before it arrived. Strategic people do not rehearse defeat. They rehearse execution. They think about what they will do, not what will be done to them. They visualize their own moves, not their opponent's victory. And if they consider worst-case scenarios, they do it coldly, briefly, for strategic purposes only, and then they close the file. They do not live in it. They do not sleep in it. They do not let it shape their emotional state walking into the real moment. Number 5. You mistake movement for progress. Your mind has a bias toward action that feels productive but is often the most destructive thing you can do. When you feel threatened, uncomfortable, uncertain, or behind, your brain screams at you to do something. Anything. Send the message. Make the call. Take the action. Fix it now. The discomfort of inaction feels like weakness, so you fill it with activity. But activity is not the same as strategy. Movement is not the same as momentum. Doing something is not the same as doing the right thing. Most people, when they feel they are losing, accelerate. They push harder, they speak more, they act faster, they try to force the situation to resolve. And in doing so, they reveal their desperation, they narrow their options, they commit to positions they cannot maintain, and they create new problems they did not have before. The impulse to always be doing something is one of the most exploitable patterns in human psychology. Your opponent does not need to trap you if they can simply wait for you to trap yourself. They create pressure, they create uncertainty, they create a sense of urgency, and then they watch you scramble. They watch you make moves out of panic. They watch you overextend, overcommit, overexplain. And every move you make in a state of panic gives them more information, more leverage, more material to use against you. Strategic people understand the power of non-action. Not passivity, not avoidance, not burying your head in the sand. Deliberate, calculated stillness. The choice to not move until moving serves you. The discipline to sit with discomfort without flinching. The ability to tolerate the pressure of not knowing, not acting, not resolving, long enough for the situation to reveal itself more clearly. Most conflicts resolve themselves if you simply refuse to rush. Most opponents expose themselves if you simply refuse to engage on their timeline. Most problems shrink if you stop feeding them with reactive energy. But your mind cannot tolerate that. It wants resolution. It wants action. It wants the dopamine of feeling like you are handling it. So you act, and you act, and you act, and you wonder why nothing is getting better. You are not failing because you are not doing enough. You are failing because you are doing too much of the wrong things at the wrong time for the wrong reasons. Stillness is not the absence of strategy. Stillness is the highest form of strategy. It is the move that does not look like a move, the action that does not look like action, the power that does not announce itself. Learn to tolerate it, or keep paying for your impatience with every opportunity you prematurely destroy. Number 6. Your desire for approval makes you readable. This is the betrayal that cuts deepest because it strikes at the core of what it means to be human. You want to be liked. You want to be accepted. You want to be seen as good, as valuable, as worthy of belonging. There is nothing wrong with that desire. It is wired into you by thousands of years of evolution. But it is also the single most exploitable vulnerability you carry. Every time you adjust your behavior to gain someone's approval, you reveal what you care about. Every time you seek validation, you tell the world what lever moves you. Every time you compromise your position to be seen as reasonable, you show your opponent exactly where your weakness lives. The desire for approval is a beacon. It broadcasts your insecurities to anyone paying attention. And the people who are paying attention are not your friends. They are the ones who want something from you. They see you laugh a little too hard at the joke that was not funny. They see you agree a little too quickly with the opinion you do not actually hold. They see you soften your position when someone pushes back, not because you changed your mind, but because you cannot tolerate being disliked. They see all of it, and they file it away, and they use it later. The person who needs to be liked cannot be trusted with power, because they will always choose approval over effectiveness. They will always choose harmony over truth. They will always choose the comfort of belonging over the discomfort of standing alone. And standing alone is exactly what power requires. Machiavelli wrote about this with a clarity that still makes people uncomfortable. He said that it is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both. People misunderstand this. They think he was advocating for cruelty. He was not. He was making an observation about leverage. Love is conditional. It depends on the other person's continued willingness to give it. Fear, in the strategic sense, is respect that does not require the other person's goodwill. Being liked is temporary. Being respected is structural. The moment you stop needing approval, you become significantly harder to read, harder to manipulate, harder to control. Not because you became colder, but because you stopped broadcasting your vulnerabilities to everyone within range. You became quieter. Less reactive. Less predictable. And in the game of power, the person who is least predictable holds the most leverage. Number 7. You refuse to walk alone, and that refusal is what makes you weak. This is the final betrayal, and it is the one that underlies all the others. Your mind is terrified of isolation. It equates being alone with being in danger. It equates standing apart from the group with being cast out, with being vulnerable, with being less than. So it constantly pushes you toward the pack. Toward consensus. Toward the comfort of shared opinion, shared direction, shared identity. But the pack is where power goes to die. The pack is where you become average by definition, where your positions are shaped by the lowest common denominator, where your thinking is constrained by what the group finds acceptable. Every figure who ever wielded real power, real influence, real strategic dominance, spent significant time walking alone. Not because they could not find company, but because they understood that clarity comes from solitude, that conviction comes from sitting with your own thoughts long enough to know which ones are actually yours. Most people cannot tolerate solitude. They fill every silence with noise, every empty hour with activity, every moment of reflection with distraction. They cannot sit with themselves because sitting with themselves means facing the parts they have been avoiding. The insecurity. The fear. The doubt. The anger they have not processed. The decisions they have not made. The truths they have been refusing to acknowledge. So they stay in the crowd, and the crowd keeps them numb, and the numbness feels like safety, and the safety is an illusion. Because the person who cannot be alone is the person who can be controlled by anyone who offers them belonging. Walk alone. Not forever, not completely, not as a lifestyle. But enough to know your own mind. Enough to hear your own voice. Above the noise. Enough to make decisions that are yours, not the group's, not the crowd's, not the culture's. Yours. The person who can walk alone is the person who has nothing to lose by standing their ground. And the person who has nothing to lose by standing their ground is the most dangerous person in any room. Those are the 7 betrayals. 7 ways your mind has been working against you, quietly, consistently, for years, while you blamed everyone else. Let me be clear about something before we go further. This is not about self-hatred. This is not about beating yourself up for every mistake you have ever made. That would be just another form of self-sabotage, another way your mind turns awareness into punishment. The point of seeing these patterns is not to feel guilty about them. The point is to diffuse them. Every pattern I just described operates in the dark. It controls you precisely because you do not see it. The moment you see it, it starts to lose its grip. Not immediately, not completely, but measurably. Awareness is not a cure. It is a weapon. And like any weapon, it only works if you pick it up and use it deliberately. So let us talk about how to use it. The daily discipline that makes you the exception. Because most people will hear what I just said, feel a flash of recognition, maybe even feel motivated for a few hours, and then go back to exactly the same patterns by tomorrow morning. That is not a failure of understanding. That is a failure of system. You need a system, not a feeling. Feelings fade. Systems persist. Here is the system. First, you audit your reactions. Every day, for the next 30 days, you review one situation where you reacted emotionally and ask yourself a single question. What was the information, and what was the story I told myself about it? Not to judge yourself, not to fix anything yet, just to see the gap between what happened and what you decided it meant. Most people never look at this gap. They live inside the story and never realize it is a story. Once you start seeing the gap, you start having a choice about whether to believe the story or not. That choice is where power begins. Second, you practice strategic silence. Once a day, in a situation where you would normally speak, react, defend, explain, or justify, you say nothing. Not forever. Just for that moment. You let the silence sit. You let the other person fill it. You let the discomfort of not responding wash over you without acting on it. What you will find is that most of the things you felt compelled to say were not necessary. They were reactions, not responses. They were your mind trying to relieve pressure, not advance your position. The person who can tolerate silence is the person who controls the pace of every interaction. Third, you separate your worth from your performance. This is the hardest one and the most important. Your worth as a human being is not on the table in any conflict, any negotiation, any interaction. It was never on the table. You put it there, and you take it off. When someone criticizes your work, your worth is not being questioned. When someone rejects your proposal, your value is not being assessed. When someone outperforms you, your humanity is not being ranked. These are events. They carry information. They do not carry verdicts on your worth. The moment you internalize this, truly internalize it, not as a slogan but as a felt reality, you become almost impossible to manipulate. Because nearly every form of manipulation relies on you believing that your worth is conditional on someone else's approval, someone else's opinion, someone else's decision. It is not. It never was. Fourth, you reframe chaos as terrain. Right now, when external circumstances go wrong, your mind treats it as an assault. Something is happening to you. You are under attack. The situation is hostile. Reframe it. The situation is not happening to you. It is happening around you. It is terrain. It is the landscape you are moving through, and like any landscape, it has features. Some are advantageous, some are dangerous, most are neutral. Your job is not to be upset about the terrain. Your job is to read it and move through it. The mountain does not hate you. The storm is not personal. The obstacle is not a statement about your value. It is just there. Deal with it. Two people can face identical circumstances. One is destroyed by them. The other is energized. The difference is entirely in perception. Not in what happens, but in what they decide it means. Master your perception, and you master the terrain. Fifth, you build the capacity to be alone. Real solitude, not just physical isolation. Time with your own thoughts, your own fears, your own desires, without distraction, without numbing, without escape. This is where you find your actual voice. Not the voice you use in meetings. Not the voice you use with friends. Not the voice you use on social media. The voice underneath all of that, the one that knows what you actually want, what you actually believe, what you are actually willing to fight for. Most people have not heard that voice in years. They have been so busy performing for others that they have lost contact with the person they were performing as. Get that voice back. It is the foundation of everything. Now let me bring this all together, because the individual patterns matter, but the overarching principle matters more. The principle is this. You are never without options. Even in the worst circumstances, even when everything has gone wrong, even when every external door is closed, you control three things. Your perception. Your actions. Your will. Nobody can take those from you. They can take your money, your position, your relationships, your reputation. They cannot take your ability to see clearly, to choose deliberately, to persist. That is not a motivational platitude. That is a strategic fact. The person who knows they always have options cannot be cornered. The person who knows their mind is their own cannot be broken. The person who has done the work to master their internal landscape cannot be defeated by anything that happens in the external one. This is what it means to be dangerous. Not loud. Not aggressive. Not cruel. Dangerous in the way that still water is dangerous. Quiet on the surface, deep underneath, impossible to read, impossible to predict, impossible to control. Every person who has ever wielded real power understood this. Marcus Aurelius, sitting in his tent on the front lines of war, writing notes to himself about the discipline of perception, about the irrelevance of external opinion, about the power of a mind that has been trained to remain its own master regardless of what the world throws at it. He was not writing philosophy. He was writing survival manuals. For himself. And the reason his words still resonate 2,000 years later is not because they are poetic. It is because they are true. The war inside is the only war that matters. Win it, and every other war becomes manageable. Lose it, and no amount of external victory will save you. So here is where we end, and here is where we return to the beginning. You think your enemies are the problem. They are not. They never were. The enemy was inside you the whole time. The ego that turned information into attacks. The anger that made you predictable. The need to be right that cost you the war. The rehearsal of defeats that never happened. The impulse to move when stillness served you. The desire for approval that made you readable. The fear of walking alone that kept you weak. All of it. Inside. All of it. Yours. And here is the good news that does not feel good at first. If the enemy is inside you, then the power to defeat it is also inside you. You do not need anyone's permission. You do not need anyone's approval. You do not need anyone's cooperation. You need to do one thing. Turn inward. Face what is there. Master it. Not in a weekend. Not in a single meditation session. Not in a moment of inspiration. As a daily discipline. As a way of being. As the most important project you will ever undertake. Because every other project, every goal, every ambition, every relationship, every venture, every dream you have, depends on the person executing it. And that person is either mastered by themselves or mastered by someone else. There is no third option. Machiavelli perfected the ruthless art of reading others, of controlling situations, of wielding power with cold precision. But every one of those skills rests on a single foundation. The person wielding them must first have mastered themselves. That is the art Machiavelli perfected. Now it is yours. Not as a gift. As a responsibility. Right now, not tomorrow. Not when you feel ready. Not when the circumstances are better. Right now, in the room you are in, with the mind you have, starting with the next thought you think. You are not someone who gets defeated by their own mind anymore. You are someone who has seen the pattern, named the cost, and decided to end it. Go to the comments and write the words, "I am untouchable." Not because you believe it yet. Write it because you are deciding to become it. The words are not a description. They are a declaration. And the declaration is the first move in a war you are finally going to win.